So let's go ahead and move on to our national stories. This is our sort of a transition as we, straddle the state and national news. Welcome back, Scott, who disappeared there briefly. Let's move on to our national stories and start with the headlines. And so this week, the Epstein story continues to haunt Trump. Not as loudly this week. Maybe this thing is fading, though we hope not. We want to keep this in the news because this is really putting pressure on that administration. But this week, like we said, Trump was in Scotland golfing and holding a couple meetings to make it look like he was doing some work. But while he was there, he was still being questioned about this Epstein thing. On Tuesday, he, on Air Force One, said that Epstein, quote, stole people that work for me, which is a really gross way to say things. That kind of implies ownership. And later in the week, Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, was transferred to a cushy Club Fed style federal prison in Texas. An unusual move because the Bureau of Prisons did not handle this transfer. Normally, the U.S. Marshals take care of this sort of thing, but sounds like maybe there was some interference from the administration to get her a cushy deal. And this is after last week, Trump's personal attorney and deputy attorney general, Todd Blanche, visited her at her previous location in Florida, granting Maxwell limited immunity to testify. It certainly appears that they are working on something shady with her. What do you think, Scott?
I think that when you have someone who's a convicted sex offender that gets into a cushy prison, and by federal law, that's not allowed, you
Correct.
have a problem. That's the start on a buy-off. And my suspicion is that she's now near a U.S. border. My suspicion is somehow she skips town.
Wow. Bold proclamation there from Scott. This is something we're going to keep an eye on. And I don't think that Trump is getting out from under this thing. His base is still pissed. So moving on, also this week, the Senate voted against a resolution proposed by Senator Bernie Sanders to block arms sales to Israel as it continues to starve the population of Gaza. Now, though this resolution did fail, 27 Democratic senators, a majority of the caucus for the first time, did vote for the block. Now, Democratic Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, and other maybe more mainstream Democrats did vote against the measure, but progressives like Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin and Jeff Merkley of Oregon, who you would expect to vote along with Sanders on this, were joined by John Ossoff, Tim Kaine, Jeanne Shaheen, and Dick Durbin. 12 of these Democrats who voted for the measure previously voted in April against a similar resolution. So slowly, Democrats are starting to come around, lining up to tell Israel to stop the genocide. Derek, I know things are bleak over there right now, but is this somewhat of a positive development?
It is. It's sad that it hasn't happened yet. I mean, as I've said many times before, I love Israel, but genocide's genocide, and it needs to stop. We need to stop providing arms to Israel to keep this up. Every time that we've tried to help feed the Palestinians, Israel has slaughtered them. Like, here's your food. Oh, by the way, you don't get to eat it.
these address distribution sites that have been set up by the U.S. and Israel have been nothing more than bait to lure desperate people to their demise. It is disgusting.
And it needs to stop. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know how much more can be said than that.
I'm glad that your average Democrat is kind of starting to put some distance between themselves and the Netanyahu government. Still not enough of them, still not quickly enough. Also this week, the Trump administration is apparently launching a new private health tracking system with the help of big tech. This one, from the AP, more than 60 companies, including Google, Amazon, and Apple, as well as healthcare giants like United Health Group and CVS, have agreed to share patient data in this system. The initiative will focus on diabetes and weight management, controversial artificial intelligence that helps patients, and digital tools such as QR codes and apps that register patients for check-ins or track medications. Jennifer, good idea or slippery slope? Or both?
I mean, it really depends on what they're looking for. Because, I mean, we live in a very unhealthy country, and there's all sorts of health issues out there that do need to be monitored, but I'm not exactly for sure what purpose they're wanting to do that. However, it does concern me as far as, again, people's personal information, and HIPAA, people do have the right to have their information protected, but there is things in there that the information can be used for, and I'm assuming that this is one of them. I need to go back and look at that because it's the form that you get every time you go to the doctor and the pharmacist about keeping your information private. But there are, like I said, things that they can use it for.
To me, it seemed like it's something that we're kind of begging for. Like, we do need the ability to share this data between different health systems and different providers and whatnot. But yeah, this could potentially open a can of worms where you have all these private actors in here. You have hackers could get into systems. We've got the potential to see folks selling your personal data for profit.
They can use
very
the
much does
information
seem like it's like a patchwork system, and
so I'm a behavior analyst, so data is great. And so again, it just depends on what they're going to use the data for. There's just so much out there with, are they looking at the people? Like, who are these people? There's been some states that have limited what you can use SNAP benefits for, food benefits. Are they looking at, are people that are on SNAP, do they have higher rates of heart disease, higher rates of diabetes, because maybe they have more access to money? Maybe that could prove that, maybe that could disprove some of the things that are people saying. I really don't think that they're trying to use any of the data to disprove anything that they're saying. They want it to prove that. And also just, to maybe see different areas of the state or of the country where you might have more health issues and you can do more interventions. But that is me as a Democrat talking about what I would use the data for. So I don't really know what they plan.
I feel like this is one of those things that it's a good idea, but it's all going to be about the implementation. And really, if we had a universal healthcare system like anywhere else in the world, we would be taking care of this upstream and not having all these private actors in here. Scott, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. So the first comment would be, first of all, how does this not violate HIPAA, right? We have very strict laws on health information sharing in the country. You want to violate HIPAA, go to Congress, pass a law. So that may be my first comment. Second comment is, I would be extraordinarily dubious of anything coming out of the tech industry. Why? Well, I've spent my life in the tech industry, and there's a fundamental belief among people who are highly successful in tech that they very much fall into what's called the Ayn Rand camp, that they quote unquote lifted themselves up by the bootstraps. And there's a lot of belief about means testing. There's a lot of belief that if you're not successful, it's your fault. It's a systemic problem with society. And when you have Trump putting out that, hey, if you got mental issues, you could be put in a concentration camp, and talking about sharing information like prescription drugs and things like antidepressants, if you're on an antidepressant, that can be deemed a mental health problem, right? It is by definition a mental health problem. You want to see lots more people rounded up, start sharing health data, right? And then don't even get me to the count of don't even bring up the issue of the fact that bringing back the presidential fitness test, right? And it sounds good on the surface, right? Americans are overweight. Sure. It sounds great, but what are they going to do with that data? This is an administration that has proved to be relentless, and they will take advantage of this data and they will do nefarious things with it. I have no problems making that bold proclamation.
And I actually fully agree with that. My first thing was, how is the administration going to use it to screw us? Like they did there was a report that they now have a list of people that are autistic. I'm like, thank you. I guess I'm on another freaking list. But I mean, I'm one of the few Americans where my medical data was already within the government's hands because I use the VA for everything. But I worry more for those that, have kids that are neurodivergent or have medical issues. What happens when and if or when this administration starts going more eugenics and getting rid of those issues?
I want to add something on the HIPAA. Oh,
yeah, please, Jennifer, go ahead.
Okay, so I did, of course, I looked it up. I have to have people fill this out all the time. So there is a part in there where it says that it can be basically used to collect information for public health, research, legal obligations. So one of those is for preventing and controlling diseases. So those, heart disease, diabetes, those are, diseases that are pretty rampant here. So that is how it's already written in law and has been for a very long time. They've been collecting information on us for a long time.
Yeah, this is there's a lot here, but I think fundamentally, if you build on top of a rotten foundation, then whatever you have is going to fall apart. I want to move on and make a quick mention of this one I saw yesterday. So apparently the Office of the Special Counsel is going to probe potential Hatch Act violations by former Special Counsel Jack Smith, who was investigating Trump's various crimes in the last couple years before his recent election. This announcement comes days after Senator Tom Cotton requested that the Office of Special Counsel investigate Smith for quote unquote unprecedented interference in the 2024 election, claiming that Smith's legal actions were nothing more than a tool for the Biden-Harris campaigns. The Hatch Act, as we know, restricts federal government employees from using their positions to engage in political activities. Is it political activity to tell the truth about a criminal, Scott? I mean, what the hell?
Absolutely not, right? Like Jack Smith, you may not like him because from my perspective, he didn't do the job, right? But he was employed by the government. He followed the rule of law, and he investigated someone that was the federal government deemed a criminal. And now what's happened is the administration is going after him because, quite honestly, don't like him. No more than that. And we're going to see this is an incredibly dangerous precedent to set, because it means that anyone who works for the federal government for doing their job can now be investigated by the next administration. Why would anyone choose to work for the feds if that's the case?
It's very, very chilling. Also chilling. is this week's announcement that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is shutting down. So the CPB is the conduit that moves federal funds to NPR and PBS, and they announced Friday that they're going to begin winding down operations after the Congress clawed back over $1 billion in their funding through fiscal year 2027. They informed employees that a majority of staff will be eliminated at the end of the fiscal year, at the end of September, holding onto a small team for things like compliance and fiscal distributions and, royalties and whatnot through the end of the year. Here's the big one. Okay, so NPR, you know, produces Morning Edition and All Things Considered, providing accurate, impartial news to places that not everybody is privy to these things. You get a lot of right wing slop radio out in rural places, especially like Indiana. So NPR relies on direct federal funding for only a small portion of their budget, but approximately 1,000 member stations receive a much heftier portion of their operating revenue through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, particularly those in poor and rural areas. So, Jennifer, are PBS and NPR going to survive without that CPB umbrella?
Yes.
You think so?
I think so. I think because we need it, and I think that people will find a way. I hope. I mean, they have been around for a long time. They're already somewhat publicly supported. You hear the campaigns, all the time. So I hope so, especially for these small communities. I've done a lot of work in rural and small communities, and when you're kind of in between Indianapolis and Louisville, you've got a huge media gap there, and so it is very much needed. So I'm going to say yes.
I really hope so. I think you're going to get a lot more fund drives going forward, though.